Good afternoon, everyone. We are expecting a great crowd today. We're going to ask that you go ahead and mute yourself as you enter and keep yourself on mute until we open it up for conversation. But we're excited to have you join us today and continue our home-based childcare webinar series. As always, we hold these meetings in a meeting format so that we can all participate and most importantly, learn from one another. So please feel free to come off of mute or place your question in the comments and comments in the chat. This session is being recorded and all of the resources will be emailed to all who registered for this session and will be available on the Build website. Today, I introduce myself. My name is Danielle Fuentes Johnson and I'm with the Build Initiative. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Lynette Dumas and Gina Capito, as well as Pilar Torres. If you can, go ahead and put your name and your location in the chat. We'll also do a quick poll. Let's see, just about your role, just to see kind of a quick snapshot of who's here with us today. But we'll take a look at the agenda. We're going to welcome one another. We're going to talk about what's working and what's not working as we look at business supports for HBCC educators whose home language is other than English. And then we'll invite Pilar to tell us about one approach, one technological approach to supporting Spanish-speaking home-based childcare educators and their business. And then we'll close by looking at what's next. We'll review our takeaways from today's session, make sure that you know who to contact in case you have any questions. And we'll also ask you to complete a short survey that will help us better create and co-create these sessions with you and for you. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Gina.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Good to see you all. So we're going to start out by doing a little bit of some review of the core beliefs. As you all know, our systems building work for family childcare, home-based childcare, is grounded in some core beliefs. And if this is your first event, you may have thought that was an interesting phrasing, that we view it as our system building work. We really do believe that family, friend, and neighbor care, family childcare, sort of whichever term you use to refer to it, is a critical piece of the early care and education system in every state and community. And we also know that in many instances, the sort of issues or ways in which family childcare has been approached over the course of years, kind of the historical approach, has not always been as a full partner in that system, and that we need to be focusing on those systemic changes, that it's providers are doing really strong, good work, and alone they cannot change the functions of how a system may not be embracing them and utilizing them as a full part of that early care and ed system. So we do like to start with the core beliefs that undergird sort of all of our approach into the content then, because it is really based in this idea of how do we change that system. So the just quick overview of the beliefs, we also like to kind of then think about what in particular, what we're doing today relates to any of these given beliefs. And so obviously belief one really highlights what I just shared there about that family, friend, and neighbor care and family childcare is part of the fabric of the mixed delivery system in our states and communities, that our strategies and the system components that support home-based care in those settings should be resourced on par with those resources that are available for centers and schools. And in particular, I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about today really relates to core belief 3, the idea that working with providers in these settings should be responsive to their needs and be developed in partnership and in response to their modality of care and sort of driven by them, even more important. And as we think about the core beliefs, we may be reaching a stage of needing to make sure that we ensure they compass all of our thoughts, because provider driven is another huge part of the work that we do. And so then funding is sort of our fourth belief, and how the systemic way that the different initiatives and private funding opportunities are leveraged, but not in a way that detracts from the uniqueness of family childcare. And then the next thing that we wanted to do, which is a little bit of a level set, is then some terms. So you heard me use a lot of terms fairly interchangeably just there, and that was intentional, but we thought that it's always helpful to make sure that we sort of are all on the same page with what we mean. We know from working across many of your states and communities that you use different terms within your regulatory system or within the approach, the sort of how you define different care providers. And so because we are a national project, Build is a national organization, definition, we are attempting to sort of encompass all of those terms by using different terms interchangeably. We're not making a judgment call on whether you should only call it home-based childcare or only call it family childcare. We are instead trying to be inclusive of all the different terms that folks already use. So that's what you see there in the first side of this defining the term slide, is this idea of in the home setting, when we're inclusive of all those different home settings where children are taken care of. And so that's why we do use those terms fairly interchangeably. And that we also acknowledge that not all providers or owners of family childcare homes refer to themselves as an educator. At times, we frequently use the term educator refer to folks, but we're not trying to do it in a way that doesn't acknowledge that family childcare are also the owners and the operators. They are the providers of the childcare. They educate the children. So many times you'll hear us use those terms interchangeably too, but we're really trying to defer to the individuals and sort of how they define themselves within the type of care. So we just thought that as the terms get more complex, it's useful for us to have a touch point as a slide to make sure that the folks aren't feeling that we're using terms in an exclusionary way, or that we're not all clear on what we mean as far as how encompassing we're trying to be with the terminology. And so with that, because I have somebody that wants to discuss something with me, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Dumas, who's going to do Let's Discuss with you all.
Thank you, Gina. I appreciate that. And I know that you're feeling a little under the weather. So thank you so much for starting us off with the core beliefs and some defining terms. And so I really appreciate the effort. And I know that your baby who's there doesn't feel well either. So take care of her. So as I'm thinking about how we support home-based childcare businesses in languages other than English, two things came to mind about the importance of bilingual engagement of home-based childcare. One is I remember outreach and doing surveys with NAFCC and finding that when there was the COVID relief came out, the Spanish-speaking respondents to our survey often reported that they didn't know about the relief, didn't know that they were eligible, didn't know how to apply. And so, and it's rooted in the idea that the home language, the primary language, isn't always accommodated, but also that the connectors that make it beyond just translation and beyond just having a thing in another language, it requires a little bit more. And from the provider-driven perspective, I think about myself as a parent and as a family child care practitioner quite some time ago, and the fact that I have been taught French, Italian, Latin, Russian, but I'm not fluent in those things. And so when I put my child in immersion, in French immersion, and the teachers are talking to me, or they're talking that I don't feel I can understand what they're saying, but I'm not able to articulate and express myself in the best way possible so that I don't seem as intelligent as I might want to seem, or maybe get my point across. So I'm saying all of that to say how important it is that we're allowing people to communicate in the language that they feel the most powerful and most proficient in. And so with that, I would like to know which languages we are using when we're supporting home-based childcare. And so on the next slide, I'm going to show you, we have a new tool. We're very excited. We have a new tool that is called the Mentimeter. And so you can access it so that you can answer this question. You can access it either by holding up your cell phone, opening the camera, and leaning into the QRC, and it'll pop up for you. Or if you don't have access to your cell phone or aren't familiar with using that technology, go in the chat and click the link, and you will find the Mentimeter, and you will be able to answer the first question, which is, what home-based childcare business supports for providers whose languages other than English does your program offer? And then we'll all be able to see the results in real time and have the opportunity to talk about it.
Okay. Wow.
Yes. Yes, I'm very excited. I did imagine that Spanish was going to be the biggest one. But am very excited to see these other languages that folks are using. Oh, and Portuguese. So we're doing our coaching, we're doing our online trainings, we're doing the technical assistance, networking, we're doing, oh wow, we're doing the business consultations, almost everything so we're actually doing supports for folks beyond just translating. So this is amazing. I think, is there anything that is surprising folks when they're looking at this, or sparking you a little light bulb coming in? Oh, I think we need to do that, or I'd like to do that.
Feel free to come off mute or put it in the chat.
Put in the chat.
I'm super excited to see conference tracks and business trainings in Spanish. Very, very, very important.
I have a question. I don't know what indie is. Can someone tell me, whoever put indie in, am I reading that right? If you can tell me what that is. I don't know what that is.
CDAs in Spanish.
Is it a typo? Love it. Okay, well, I will move on. And thinking about, I think one of the things that was on the mix was saying online and technical supports in other languages. And so, and you can kind of think of, technology as its own language, in some ways. And so how is it that we're engaging and supporting home-based childcare using technology? What's actually working? What are the tools that are really, people are using it, we're getting what we need from it, they're getting what they need from it, and why do you think that it's successful? We can also do that in the Mentimeter.
Well, and that we have an ideas board for. I'm gonna put that in the chat. Yeah, it's okay. Technology. We're gonna try and use technology here.
I'm losing my technology terms. I got to get my proficiency up.
So I'm gonna stop that. We'll go over to the idea boards. And for those that may not be familiar with idea boards, as you can see in the bottom left corner, you can upvote if you agree with or start a new sticky note by adding a plus sign.
Mary Jane, that is amazing. That's awesome.
Can you tell us, Mary Jane, a little bit about the language bank?
Oh, yes, we just started working with the language bank. So it's a group of people that has various languages available in various dialects. So we're going to pay them to help us with the training and orientation. And then we're hoping maybe to use like Google Translate when we go out for the inspections. But we have a pretty large number of refugees that are very interested. It's a whole resettlement. So it really will be worth our while to get them because they feel most comfortable providing this service to their fellow Afghans.
And where are you located, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I'm located in Middlesex County, New Jersey, and the refugee resettlement is in Highland Park.
Okay.
And where did you get the word? Like, how did you access the word bank? How did you get connected with the?
It's a church that's sponsoring all of them.
Okay.
Okay. And with housing, and then they contacted us to say this is what they'd like to do moving forward.
Okay. And what is the deepl.com?
And we have a message about Telegram too.
Oh,
or Telegraph, right? Yeah, Telegram. I'm not familiar with that one either.
Hello there. I'm the one who added the deepl.com. I'm Simon from Olarkin here in Connecticut. So yeah, so DeepL is pretty similar to Google Translate. It's a free service. I mean, been using this for quite a year or so, and I find it very useful because sometimes Google Translate, it translates word by word, and when that goes into Spanish, it's very difficult to understand. So a friend of mine shared this website with me, and I like it because you can translate a large text, and it keeps the idea of that meaning when it comes to Spanish. I use it for Spanish. So it's easy, it's free. So I recommend everyone to use deepl.com, and it has different languages. Thank you.
I was just gonna ask, are there other languages? But you said it, so.
Sure.
And we'll be compiling all of these websites, resources, and send them out with you with the recording and PowerPoint as well.
Thank you, Oscar. I can always count on you. Thank you. Okay, so this is good. This is going to be great, especially once we send out this information after the webinar and folks have something to kind of play around with and see what works in their programs. So what do we think? Because I think when you know what the barriers are things that help us define solutions. It's not a stopping point. It's not where you say, oh, there's a barrier, let's stop, we can't do it. It's a barrier that means, yay, we can think creatively and do some innovation. So what do we think are some of the barriers to folks accessing technology or accessing some of the things that we're using or may have wanted to use? So what do we think are some of the things that are stopping people from using or maybe fully using the potential of the technology or the that we are offering to them? Internet connection, yes. Lack of funds at the systems level, yes. Funny answer with all things. Digital literacy, digital divide, tech savvy, having the resources, unfamiliar. So if there are these things that are happening, then I guess we have to, in another call, because they're going to cut my time so that we can spend more time with Pilar. But we'll spend another time together thinking about how do we meet these challenges and overcome the barriers to folks actually in all the languages, not just English, not just Spanish, in all the languages. How are we meeting the needs of home-based childcare programs? And with that, I'm going to ask one last question, and then I will turn it over to Pilar Torres, my very good friend and trusted colleague. How do you define, and we're going to answer this in the chat. I know this one. We're answering this in the chat. How do you define digital literacy? How would you define digital literacy? Put that in the chat, and I will turn it over to Pilar, who will guide you through the next part of the webinar.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm very excited to be with you today, and thank you so much for taking time to hear some of what we want to share with you today. I would like to start by answering that question of how do you define digital literacy. I think when I prepared this presentation with the team, I did not share this with them, but I feel like I'm going to go ahead and do it without their permission because it's so relevant to the question, this last question. And I think it's really relevant for all of us to think about digital literacy in a very, in multitude, and it has many dimensions. And the first dimension is what, according to this graphic, they describe as the opportunity. Sometimes digital literacy is just an issue of opportunity. People don't have access to like Lanet was saying, some people just weren't hearing about the PPP loan, didn't understand. The message was not being delivered to them through the right channels, the right distribution. Sometimes it's an issue of tools. So many people don't have computers at home, and digital literacy has been kind of concentrated primarily on computers, though we are moving more and more now towards mobile devices, which is changing the game. Because what we do know is that although many Latinos, for example, don't have computers at home, they do have smartphones. And smartphones are essentially a little computer, palm held computer. So we are now we're entering into a new world of more connectivity, more access. But still there are people that don't have internet. There are people that have very bad internet connection. And all of this is connected to sort of the infrastructure of digital, what could be considered digital literacy. So that's like the first layer. And I'm sure that when we work with home-based family childcare providers, we're probably going to be dealing with people who may not have a computer, may have a tablet, probably have a phone, but probably don't have a computer. So when we're making decisions about purchasing, let's say, courses and training, something to think about is, are they available on mobile devices? That's like a really fundamental question. Then we need to talk about use. Can you use, how do we know how to use, which is what many of you are saying in your chat, in the chat. Do you know how to navigate? Do you know how to access information? Can you multitask? Do you know how to put information into the internet and draw information out of the internet? Do you have the tools and the text, the skills that you need to use technology? That's the next level, like the next layer. I would say that many home-based family childcare providers are going to probably still be missing some of these skills. They may use, they have a lot of technology that is ubiquitous, right? They have Google. They may know how to do share a YouTube video. They may know how to use Facebook. Some of them may even have Instagram, although there's a generational issue there. Like even for me, I barely use Instagram. That's all my daughter uses. My kids don't use Facebook anymore. So it's like, Facebook is like the old people thing, right? And Instagram, and there are other things that are probably even beyond my daughter. She was telling me about something like she doesn't even know how to use anymore. So it's moving very fast. But then what we really need to get at is, can you use technology to learn? So it's one thing to be able to watch a YouTube video and share it with your mom. It's another to take a class, to be able to finish a course, finish an online program, finish an online CDA. So I want to share with you guys now. I will share this little graphic if you guys want it. So I'll send it somehow while I'm doing this, but I'm not a good multitasker. So what I wanted to kind of talk to you about, guys, today is something that we at Luna decided to do, because we understand that this is a huge problem. I'm going to walk you through a presentation. It's in Spanish, and I know that many of you don't speak Spanish, and I apologize for that. But I did want to, have you experience. Sometimes I like to give people the experience of looking at something that is in a language they don't understand, and I'm curious as to some of the reactions you might have. So sometimes it might be like a little bit of frustration, like, why is she doing this in Spanish if she knows we're all English speakers? Or, oh my God, this is kind of annoying. Like, or Jesus, I don't understand a word. I don't see, I'm trying to understand what's visually in the screen and what I'm going to be saying to you verbally, orally. And I want you to kind of try to get in tune with that, because that is what a lot of non-English speakers experience all the time, where they have to take a class that is not in their native language, or they have to take a class in English with some kind of simultaneous translation, or there is no translation. I go to many states where there is absolutely nothing being done in anything but English. And many non-English speakers sit through these trainings and have to go through this process. And it's quite difficult and quite overwhelming sometimes. The reason why I want to walk you through this is because I want to share with you an experience that we had. Luna created a partnership with this organization. It's a software company. They're called Kinedu. And we selected them because they're trilingual. And they are, we invited them to participate in kind of like a little pilot with us, where we would invite our Latina family childcare providers. And by the way, that offer stands. So if any of you are interested in this, you can reach me and I will connect the provider to this special offer. That's not the intention of today. The intention of today is to just give you an example of something that was done in terms of like creating an alliance with two different organizations trying to solve this issue of digital literacy, because it is a gigantic issue. And I believe that we have to do collaborations in order to address some of these giant needs, because we can't do it all alone. So the proposal we made for them is come to our Luna meeting and explain to our Luna participants and members why technology, like make the case for technology, and then let's offer them an opportunity to learn, to improve their digital literacy. Because like I said, we do know there are many issues around digital literacy. Some is connection, some is hardware, some is software, some of it is simple lack of skills. And then the higher level is just having skills, but not really knowing how to navigate a course. So we needed to find a way to help them do that. So we went and created this partnership, this alliance with them, and they accepted the challenge, and they are, accepted the collaboration, because they also understand that there is this giant learning curve that we are having to narrow between for Spanish speakers, particularly, and immigrants. So aside from all the language barriers, they have a digital barrier. So it's like triple issue, triple challenge. So they basically accepted our challenge, and they made the case. And the way they presented this to the providers was, okay, technology and early childhood education, this is a combination that is here to stay. And it's true. The technology train left the station a long time ago, and there's no stopping it. And it's only gaining more and more speed, and it's leaving more and more people behind. So it's kind of convincing them that they need to get on this bus. So the internet offers access to resources and materials. It's a way of communicating with families and parents in real time, which has become all the more relevant, especially after COVID and other kind of emergency situations where we've had to scramble to figure out ways to communicate with families. And of course, social media, right? It's a way to connect, it's a way to get ideas, it's a way to market your program and give yourself a unique position in the market. So here were other ways in which they were making the case for technology is a great ally in your day-to-day work. It helps you collaborate with families around learning. It improves communication that is more effective and direct. It creates more trust and a better service to the client. It helps you market yourself. It helps you manage and administer your program more efficiently. It gives you, mobility. You can, if you're an owner, you're a home-based childcare program owner, you need to step out to go to the bank and make a deposit. You are still connected to your program, and your teachers can let you know something that's happening. And of course, most importantly for Kinedu and for all of us, ultimately, I think, is clarity in the pedagogical process. It's really helping the provider transfer that knowledge to the child and to the family. So Kinedu, you can look them up. They're a Mexican-based company, and like I said, they're trilingual. They're available in Spanish, English, and Portuguese. So it's primarily a curriculum software program. So they talk a lot about socio-emotional learning and the impact of experiences on child development, and the importance of learning in terms of developing lifelong skills like self-regulation, executive functioning, memory, socio-emotional skills, language, and motor skills. They have 3 versions. They have one for educators, one for families, and one for like administrators. So as you can see here, I noticed in your feedback about why certain technology platforms are used more than others. One of them is the simplicity, and visually are very easy to understand. I think this is something that you really need to look at when choosing software and choosing programs to give to the providers. Things that are like here, the management of the platform itself is super easy. It's very accessible. It's like ... And they have like a different, the way the software is designed is that it follows the day-to-day, the trajectory, like the curriculum of the day, morning, noon, you know, so the provider can continue using the software as the day goes by. It has to, what can she do? What can they do? They can load classes and resources so they can show their own, whatever they're doing in their program. They can upload it and show off, you know, a new activity. They can synchronize their planning and communication, and it has an evaluation component where they can evaluate the developmental progress of the child, all in Spanish. So right here, you're already eliminated that one huge problem that many of you talked about. Even, you know, beyond the digital literacy process, if you are, let's say you are digitally literate and you're comfortable navigating through things, but everything is in English, then, you know, it's kind of a, you know, it creates a barrier, a problem. So here was kind of what the special offer that we did with them was that we invited them to kind of join Kinedu and purchase Kinedu at a very affordable price. That's another barrier that none of you mentioned. Cost is a huge problem sometimes for technology. The cost of the hardware, like buying the computer, laptop, or smartphone, but even subscribing to a curriculum, subscribing to a platform, or buying, you know, a whole bunch of curriculum can be extremely expensive. That's why many family childcare providers don't buy any of this, because unless they're part of a network, and the network, let's say an early Head Start network, is purchasing the software, the individual standalone provider can't buy it. So this is very accessible. That was a big thing that we discussed a lot with this partner. So we told them, look, we really want to do this, but it has to be very affordable. So they were like, you know, gung-ho and really open to that. But the most important thing that we did for the providers is that we said to them, okay, if you sign up, we're also going to offer you a 4-part training on digital literacy. We're going to have 4 like 90-minute workshops, and they're going to be on the first one, and they were going to be designed to be used within the platform. So the classes were based on Kinedu for sure, but they had to be transferable. And that's what I told Kinedu. We told them, look, we want to partner with you. We love Kinedu, like we really love them. We think they're a great resource, but we also realized that they're not the only ones. And we wanted to make sure that the providers were able to take those skills and move them beyond Kinedu. So the first workshop was on coordination, planning, and standards using a platform that supports curriculum. Pretty much all platforms have something like this. The idea is that they would now learn how to understand how to connect all those dots, coordination, planning, and standards within a one-stop kind of point of entry through their phone. Because obviously that one of the reasons why we love Kinedu is because it's available in mobile devices. Workshop 2, documentation and evaluation. How can a platform support curriculum beyond the day-to-day like implementation of the curriculum, but how do you document and evaluate what you're doing? So that's another thing that Kinedu offers that most platforms, I would guess, offer, which is that you have to document. There has to be some kind of result, like a printout or a report that you can obtain that shows you what you've done on a month-to-month basis or week-to-week basis, and hopefully some way of evaluating the progress of the child. And that's the power that then they can communicate that with the family and collaborate around specific areas of need that the child might have. So that was the second class. The third class was communication and synchronizing with families, like making sure families are on the same page. So one of the perks that they got here was that if the provider signed up for the platform for Kinedu, the family got Kinedu. The families in her program would get Kinedu, and that way they would all be coordinated and talking to each other. The final workshop, we decided to leave it open and have the women choose what they wanted. And we offered 2 options. One was marketing and social media. And the second one was like program management using Google Docs. And they actually picked Google Docs. So that was the 4th class, but potentially there could be a 5th class. So here, basically, this just goes down and explains to them. But again, very step-by-step, kind of very hand-holdy, one by one, walking them through how to register. And you can see that visually everything is super simple and very clear and very easy to understand. All of these things were very important to us, and we collaborated very intensely with Kineo to develop this idea. So I'm going to stop presenting, and I would love to hear questions, comments, and anything that you would like to know about what this collaborative strategy that we developed to try to address digital literacy. That was kind of our ultimate goal.
Pilar, but while individuals are coming off of mute and putting their questions or comment in the chat, can you tell us a little bit about the impact that this has had for the providers, educators who have been using this approach for their business, and what their business, the results have looked like?
We have a small group of women who've been using the program. This was a one-shot thing that we haven't repeated. We're going to repeat it again this year and a couple more times, hopefully. I would say that the result has been moderately successful, and I will tell you why. We think a lot of women don't. I think that the reason why it hasn't been more successful is because I don't think they're still not clear on why. And this is a huge challenge for a lot of the program management or curriculum apps, because the majority of the women that we're talking to are standalone providers. They're not in a network. And we think that if this was kind of part of a network, they would do it, and unfortunately, a lot of times people don't jump on board and in terms of doing something new, it has to be very clear as to why am I doing this. It feels a little bit like extra work to them sometimes, and it is extra work. But if you are part, let's say you're part of a network, or I'm the manager of a network, and I have, let's say 25 Latinas, and I'm trying to find out how they're working, what they're doing, how their children are doing. This would be so much easier for me. So I would make them do it. I would say to them, you have to, if you want to be part of my network. And that's what Wonder School, and in some ways Head Start, you could argue, is doing with their teaching strategies. It's like, if you want to be part of the Family Child Care Early Head Start network, you have to use teaching strategies. So but if you're a standalone provider, no one's telling you to do it. It feels like it's a little bit more than you need. So I think that why has not been answered. For those that are using it, I think that they have found it to be really fun. I think the part that is most popular, I would say, is the communication with families. Kind of that feeling very professional and being able to send to their families, look, this is the report from your 3-year-old baby. Here it is. Here's where the baby is. And I think that blows parents away, like their heads explode. So I think that makes them feel more professional and more like competitive. And Latinas, I would say, and those of you who are on the call who work with Latinas could comment on this, are very shy about trying new technologies, trying new things, because they don't feel like they are very insecure, I think is the word I'm trying to find. They feel a lot of insecurity about a lot of things. And so I think this gives them kind of something to stand on. It gives them a little bit of like a tool to say, hey, I'm like everybody else. I'm good enough, Yeah. So I think but I think that why it still is, we need to answer that for them better.
Oh, we have some comments in the chat, really loving the idea that it generates the reports for families and the importance of the why. There is a question about whether or not it's been accepted in the local QRAS or quality system. Is there an engagement with that component?
We are working on that, and Kinedo is very interested in penetrating the system by aligning to specific standards. The challenge with QRS, of course, is that every state has a different, QRS. So for them, it's not necessarily cost effective unless they have like a critical mass of providers that are going to sign up. And in order to do that, it would have to be through some kind of a network. So there are a lot of challenges, but we're looking at all of that. We're exploring things.
So what other questions what bubble up? Either the chat or come off mute, come on camera. Are you using something similar where you are?
I'd love to hear more from Oscar. He made a really interesting comment. I wonder if if you would speak more to that.
The comment
I also
being,
saw that somebody made like kind of that why I lost. Oh, here it is. Oh, yes, you have to have the why and all efforts for all things. Yes, absolutely. The why is key. And technology, as much as we are all kind of on board with it, and like we're here right today talking to each other through Zoom, there are many people that are still not convinced. And they're very uncomfortable with it. So there are a lot of learning curves that have to be climbed to narrow this gap, but it's a huge one, and it's one that I hope that you are all thinking about as you are developing programs and thinking innovatively. Innovation is awesome, but sometimes if it's not thought of correctly, it's just another barrier.
absolutely. Well, with that, please feel free to put any comments in the chat. We're just going to think through with you as we come to the end of our time together, how quickly time really did fly today.
Oh, here, Oscar's writing again.
Okay.
Without language access, monolingual provided blind. Yes, absolutely. Yes, language is an issue of justice, and if you add to that digital, the digital abilities, like Danielle, Lanet said, it's another language. It's another language that we need to learn, and if you don't have it, you are like Oscar is saying, you are literally deaf and blind.
With that in mind, as we leave this session today, we're hoping that we can leave you with the ideas of how can technology be used to support home-based childcare businesses in multiple languages, thinking sort of through that, how can technology then be used to foster the connection between educators in the system? How can your organization provide multilingual materials, resources, and supports? And do you have the ability to provide the wraparound once you provide the translation to get providers in the door? Looking at different platforms like Kinedo or Wonderschool or some of the others that are out there to support them in the day-to-day and help organize their business and give them the tools to help them really feel confident and successful in that aspect of their delivery of their program and businesses. So we thank you so much for being with us today. When we send out the slides, we will include Pilar's presentation in the slides in Spanish. The information, if you have follow-up questions for Pilar, as well as Kinedo, and then Gina, Lanet, and myself. But we did want to remind everyone that our next national webinar will be held on June 21st, and at 3 p.m. we'll continue, and wanted to slow down our presentation to make sure that we had time to dig in a little bit deeper into different platforms and business supports. So we're going to continue in June, the next part of this series, on business supports for home-based childcare educators whose first language is other than English. And then we'd also invite you, if you are able, to attend the Build conference. And right now that's going to be held that will be held virtually. And it's the 11th, 12th, and 13th of July. And the early bird rates are still in effect. So We'll encourage you to see us again in June and possibly in July. If you have any questions, please, we'll stay on chat for a few minutes to capture anything else that you want to share. We'll share out the recording, the PowerPoint, and the resources shared, and the information you all generously shared with us. Thank you so much.